I do a lot of videos on how great Northern Colorado and Fort Collins is, highlighting aspects such as lifestyle, outdoor access, and education. But the fact is that Fort Collins isn't perfect, and I'm about to tell you 8 things I genuinely don't like about living here. Now, this video is really hard for me to make because if you've seen any of my other videos, you know that I am obsessed with Fort Collins. I grew up here. I attended Colorado State University. I even moved to Northern California for a period of time and have since moved back to the area. And I still think it is one of the best places to live. But I also know that it isn't for everybody, and it definitely has some things that I would change if I could. So today we're going to get into the real stuff, the things that you won't find in any brochure, the honest truths that you won't find on a Zillow or Google. And by the end of this video, I hope that you're going to have a much clearer picture of whether Fort Collins is actually the right fit for your life. So if you're thinking about relocating to Fort Collins, stay tuned because you will want to hear this transparent and brutally honest perspective. Let's just start with the big one, because if you're doing any research on Fort Collins, you've probably already seen this come up. The cost of living has climbed significantly over the last decade or so. Housing prices have risen fast, and the median home price now sits around the mid 500,000s. Rent is also more expensive than most people expect from a mid-sized city. While it's not San Francisco, it's not cheap either. So many people want to live here, and the supply of housing and infrastructure just hasn't been able to keep up with demand. Combine that with the growing job market, top-ranking education system, and an outdoor lifestyle that genuinely is hard to match anywhere else, and the prices are going to go up. Now, it is important to remember that it does depend on where you're coming from. I moved back from California, and I want to be clear, the prices here felt like a giant relief compared to what I was paying out there. And the same goes for people who are moving here from maybe a place like Seattle or Miami, the East Coast, or most of California. But if you're locating from a more affordable part of the country like Texas, Wyoming, or Arizona, prices in Fort Collins will absolutely feel like a shock. And here's what I always tell people. You don't have to live in the city itself to enjoy everything Fort Collins has to offer. A lot of people are finding their sweet spot in the surrounding communities. Loveland is just to the south, Severance is just to the east, Wellington is just north of town, or places like Johnstown, Berthoud, and Longmont are just a little bit further out. You get significantly more house for your money, and you're just a short drive from everything Fort Collins has to offer. But do understand that you will pay a premium to have a Fort Collins address. And if those things I mentioned matter to you like they do to me, great. But if they don't, then there are so many other options. If you are curious about some of the surrounding areas and what each of them look like, check out my other videos. The second thing I don't love about Fort Collins is the fact that it doesn't have a super robust public transportation system, and the traffic has become worse with the growing population. Congestion on the main roads, including College Avenue and Harmony Road especially, can definitely test your patience during peak hours. The locals will tell you that you won't read in any relocation guide is the train crossings. There are several active railroad crossings throughout the city, and getting stuck at one of them during rush hour or when you're already running late is a very Fort Collins experience. It's almost like a rite of passage. It will happen to you, and eventually you learn to factor in that time when planning to be anywhere across town. Now, with that being said, roads have widened in some areas to try to keep up with the demands, and there are better routes if you know where to look. But traffic is consistently one of the top complaints from people who have lived here for a few years, and especially seeing the traffic growth after being away for 7 years. It is one of my least favorite things about Fort Collins, mainly because I remember the days when you could make it across town in just 10 minutes, pretty much anywhere east to west, but now it's anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes to get across town in any direction. But with the booming traffic comes one of the reasons e-bikes have absolutely exploded in Fort Collins. The trail system here is incredible, and Fort Collins was actually just awarded again the top platinum level recognition for being one of the most bicycle friendly communities in the nation. So if you are wanting to live somewhere where you can commute to work, ride your kids to school, or take an e-bike to run errands or pick up groceries instead of getting in your car, Fort Collins is definitely the place to do that. All right, the third thing I hate about Fort Collins, and this one I actually genuinely hate, is the wind. Oh, I hate the wind. And I feel like nobody warns you about it when you move to Fort Collins. Sitting at the base of the Front Range, we experience a weather pattern here known as Chinook winds, which are warm, dry, gusty downslope winds that occur on the eastern side of the Rocky Mountains. They often cause temperatures to rise dramatically in just a few hours. These winds rapidly melt snow, they create high fire risks, and they produce wind gusts exceeding 60 miles an hour. So depending on where you're at in the city, you can get hit with some serious, intense gusts. I live just about as west as you can get, and while I can jump on my mountain bike or hike really whenever I want to, I can get hit with some of the worst winds Fort Collins will experience. Now, this isn't meant to scare you. I just want to make sure that I'm being completely honest in this video. These winds can get strong enough that they can take down your fence, they can rip shingles off of roofs, they can send your patio furniture, your trampoline, and even play sets into the next yard. The wind has also been known to close major highways, particularly up north on I-25 or Highway 287 going to Wyoming. Especially in the winter, the wind will blow so hard that semi-trucks will fall over, or it'll blow the snow right across the highway and create really dangerous black ice. That's just something that you'll have to take into consideration when you move here and just be able to adapt through that. And unfortunately, the worst time of winds is actually in the spring. And that, unfortunately, is when the winds can be relentless for, honestly, days at a time. If you are somebody who loves being outside, and let's be honest, that's probably why you are moving here, you will learn very quickly that you have to plan your outdoor activities around the wind forecast just as much as the temperature. While some locals adapt, if you're like me and you absolutely hate the wind, you might truly never get over the frustration it can cause. And if you're newer to the area, it can take a season or two to stop being caught off guard by it. All right, moving on. And this next one is truly unfortunate, but I think it's a real thing, and I want to make sure that I'm being upfront about it. Fort Collins itself isn't typically in the direct path of wildfires, but the surrounding national forests and foothills are absolutely at risk. In 2020, the Cameron Peak Fire, the largest wildfire in Colorado history, started just miles from Fort Collins and burned over 200,000 acres, destroying nearly 500 structures, including homes. Smoke from regional fires can drift during late summer and significantly impact the air quality for days or even weeks at a time. Just last year, we actually had a relatively clean summer thanks to good snowpack and a wet spring, but this winter we are well behind our typical snowpack, and things on the Front Range have been incredibly dry this winter, and we have already seen a couple of wildfires start up, which is truly unheard of for winters in Colorado. Power can also be cut off due to high winds, especially if it has been very, very dry, to help limit wildfire risk. So making sure you keep that in mind. But also for people with respiratory problems, with asthma, COPD, this is a genuine quality of life consideration that you need to factor in. It's not every year and it's not every day, but it does happen, and it's becoming more common as climate patterns shift. And if you're looking at homes near the foothills specifically, which are some of the most beautiful properties in the area, just know that getting insurance placed can be a little bit more difficult and more expensive. This is something me and my team help clients navigate all the time. So before you fall in love with a property, make sure that you've talked to an experienced and trusted insurance agent first. The next one is the lack of big city amenities. Fort Collins is approximately 170,000 residents, and while you would think that that might warrant some big city amenities, Fort Collins truly keeps its small town feel and has somewhat limited amenities. Now, I am specifically talking about things like museums, botanical gardens, major sporting events, things like Topgolf, water parks, amusement parks, large theater productions, super high-end shopping and dining, etc. These things are all going to be found in Denver and not Fort Collins. Now, Denver is only about an hour and 15 minutes south on the interstate, and honestly, there are worse drives. Many Fort Collins residents do that trip regularly, and although the highway is seemingly under constant construction, the drive is fairly straightforward, and many truly don't feel like it's a burden at all. But what it does give you is a genuinely wonderful local scene. Old Town Fort Collins is one of the most vibrant and walkable downtown areas I have ever seen in a city this size. The local restaurant, brewery, and live music scene is legitimately impressive. Direct proximity and access to trails, lakes, and other outdoor activities that you don't have to necessarily drive to, as well as a close-knit community where everyone feels like a neighbor. You just do not get that in big metro areas. Homeowners and auto insurance rates in Colorado have been increasing significantly, and the reasons are wildfire risk, hailstorms, high wind, and a general uptick in weather-related claims across the state. The wildfires really weren't a thing, and it would get windy on a handful of occasions in the spring, but nothing quite like the extreme weather patterns we are seeing now. And as a result, there are more people making more claims, and insurance prices are increasing to cover these costs. For example, a major hailstorm in May of 2024 caused nearly $2 billion worth of damage across Colorado to roofs, cars, and property. Insurance companies have responded just by raising rates, and in some cases actually pulling out of Colorado market entirely. For some homeowners, insurance alone has added hundreds, if not thousands, of dollars per year to what they expected their housing costs to be. That can be a super meaningful shift on the math of affordability, especially when you're already dealing with higher home prices. Again, depending on where you're coming from, Colorado home insurance or any insurance rates might actually be comparable or even lower than what you are paying now. And it really varies market by market and by your specific situation. It can also fluctuate based on where you are going to live. If you live in a townhome in the middle of Fort Collins, your HOA will most likely cover your roof and siding, so your insurance costs will be less. But the key takeaway is that don't treat insurance as an afterthought in your home search. Know what you're getting into before you make an offer, especially on properties near the foothills or in areas with higher hail exposure. This is something we prioritize with our relocation clients from day one and help them navigate during their home buying journey. Okay, so number 7 is that the weather is more extreme here than it looks on paper. Fort Collins markets itself and honestly earns the reputation as a place with 300 days of sunshine a year. And it is true, but what doesn't make it into the headline is that how wildly unstable our weather can be. And I'm not kidding. It literally just happened here. It was 64 yesterday afternoon. A storm blew in. The temps dropped to 32. It started snowing all last night. And today is blue skies, back up to 63s. You guys, the weather out here can drive some people nuts. And this is what I'm talking about. Big temperature swings, dramatic and quick changes in the weather that can result in snow, hail, and winds, and it just makes it frustrating to even walk to the mailbox sometimes. The good news is that nothing lasts long in Colorado. The storms typically blow out as quickly as they came in, and you never get a long, gloomy winter. But if you're coming from a more consistent climate like Arizona, Texas, or Florida, it can be one of the biggest adjustments you'll have to overcome. Now, while typically this isn't a deal breaker for most people, they still see the benefits of living in Fort Collins, and it outweighs some of our crazy weather. You will need to be prepared for it, especially if you're buying a home. Make sure that your roof is in good shape, that you have a solid sense of what insurance is going to cost before you buy. All right, so closing out our list here at number 8 with the things that I do not like about Fort Collins is that Fort Collins has literally ruined every other place I've ever lived in, and none of them come close to what you'll find in Fort Collins. Now, I'm not saying that any of these places are lame or don't have their own attributes, but for me, Fort Collins is literally the perfect balance of work opportunity, outdoor lifestyle, welcoming and friendly culture, safety, and a community that cares about the place that they live and continues to strive to make it better for its residents. But what I've also seen is how many of these people end up making their way back to Fort Collins, including myself. There is just something about it here. It just gets into your blood. And once you've experienced a Saturday afternoon tubing down the Poudre River with your friends, paddleboarding or boating on Horsetooth Reservoir, or spending time with friends in an outdoor patio and listening to live music, it is very hard to go back to a way of life without that. Fort Collins is an extraordinary place to live, but I know it's not for everybody, and that's okay. I believe that informed people make better decisions, and the best relocations I've been a part of are ones where the client came in with clear eyes, knew exactly what to expect, and was still excited to make the move. If you're seriously considering a move to the Fort Collins area or anywhere in northern Colorado, make sure you reach out to connect. Me and my team specialize in helping people successfully relocate to northern Colorado. And if you've enjoyed this video, do not forget to hit that like and subscribe button so more people like yourself can see these videos. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.